Hi guys, welcome to your second revision screencast, and we're going to be continuing with the skeletal system. Okay, so last week we looked at, the last lesson we looked at the function of skeletal systems versus structure. So now what we're going to be looking at is the joints. Okay, we're going to cover all of this. This will be done in your next screencast. So if you want to refer back to these when it comes to revision, that's absolutely fine. This is what is on the specification and what is expected of you for your exam, what may come up on questions in the exam. So first of all, we've got the same structures we have before, so question mark allocation, circle important information, memory method you're going to use, translate that memory method into an actual structured paragraph, and then extend with the example you're going to be using for your exam. Classification of joints. So there actually are three types of joints. Okay, can you, if you want it, if you think you can do it right now, pause it, get down what you think the actual types of joints are. If you're struggling with that, you can use these to help you out, try and remember. So if you, again, pause this now and try and answer those, then the answers are going to come up in a minute. Pause. Okay, so you've got, what are the three types of joints? Fixed joint, slightly movable joint, and synovial joint. We're going to go on to the next slide with a bit more detail on these classification of joints. So first of all, fixed joint. So we need to be able to describe a fixed joint, or at least key points of a fixed joint. So give me an example of a fixed joint, and then they are some information, or there's some information that you should know about fixed joints. The same with slightly movable joints, and the same with synovial joints. So if you pause now and give those a go for me. So fixed joint example is your cranium. These joints do not move, held together by tough fibrous tissue. So it's the joints in here. Now there's actually separate different bones within the cranium, and they're fused together just after birth, and that is an example of a fixed joint. Slightly movable joint, your example is your vertebrae. These joints allow slight movement. Ends are covered in cartilage to reduce friction between bones. If that wasn't there, these bones just rub together and it causes severe pain, erosion and discomfort, and you'd have problems walking, moving, etc. Finally, synovial joints allow large movements. Ends are covered in hyaline cartilage. Now we're going to go on to more detail now in regards to synovial joints. First of all, here's an exam question for you. Identify the three types of joints found in the body. Hopefully you should get that now after doing what we've just done. So if you pause it and answer it, the answer is fixed joint, slightly movable joint, and synovial joint. So, synovial joints, can you name the 6 synovial joints of the body? What I want you to do, there's pictures here of different types of joints. I want you to identify the 6 synovial joints. Also, just for these boxes only, this one you don't need to bother about. For these boxes only, can you identify the articulating bones, the top 3 joints? Each orange box represents a bone. So if you pause this and have a go, you should be doing the 6 synovial joints and then the articulating bones. So pause this and give it a go. Here are your answers. So you have a hinge joint, ball and socket joint, condyloid joint, gliding joint, pivot joint, and saddle joint. You should have had humerus, ulna, radius. For your ball and socket, this one in particular, that's your femur. Therefore, this is your pelvis. Radius, carpals are here. All of these are your carpals. Then you have your ulna, that's a condyloid joint, i.e. the wrist. Gliding joint, pivot joint, saddle joint. What I want you to do is, can you provide an example for each of the 6 synovial joints identified? So for example, I've just given you here condyloid joint. An example of a condyloid joint is the wrist joint, okay? So can you answer that and pause this for me? That's what you should have. Hinge, we've got elbow and knee, ball and socket, shoulder and hip, condyloid, wrist, gliding, carpals and tarsals, pivot, atlas and axis in the neck, saddle, thumb. Now, I haven't got the answers for this, but could you extend this and could you actually then give sporting examples for each one? So your elbow might be a shot in basketball, follow through from flexion to extension, and that is the hinge joint movement that occurs. Synovial joint structure. So we will continue and actually go on to the movements in a minute. But first of all, you need to know synovial joint structure. So if you just fill in the gaps for me where you can, pause this and then we'll go on to the next slide with the answers on. So bursa. Now if you actually remember a bursa, that is a small fluid-filled sac, and what it does, it prevents or provides cushioning between the tendons and the bones. So you have bursas between a tendon and a bone. It just provides some kind of comfort there. Articulating bone, i.e. they're just the bones that make up the joint. Here's the joint, and these bones are the bones that actually make up the joint. Ligament, guys, I want you to write this information down if you can't remember already. Ligament has two functions: connects bone to bone and provides stability for the actual bones as well. Synovial fluid is thick, okay, it's a liquid, and basically it just lubricates the joint and reduces friction, as well as also provides nutrients for the articular or hyaline cartilage. This is the hyaline cartilage. Synovial fluid actually provides nutrients for the hyaline cartilage. The hyaline cartilage is at the end of the bones, provides a smooth and slippery coverage to stop the bones rubbing or grinding together. So basically, hyaline cartilage reduces friction, stops the bones rubbing together. Synovial membrane we have here, the capsular lining. And so this basically is just a capsular line that releases the synovial fluid. So all of this around here actually just releases the synovial fluid, which helps reduce friction and nourishes the hyaline cartilage. And then finally, the joint capsule itself is an outer sleeve to help hold the bones in place and protect the joint. That's all the information you need on these. So here we have an exam question for you. The ankle is an example of a synovial joint. State two functions of ligaments within Eve's ankle. So if you could just pause and answer that. This is what you should be getting. It attaches articulating bones to form a joint, i.e. connects bone to bone, provides stability at the joint. Now, movements available at synovial joints. We went through, many weeks ago now, went through different movements available at joints. Here they all are. Can you get them down from those? Hopefully just fill in the blanks. Pause now. So they are your answers. I won't go through all of them. Just make sure you get them down, you understand them. The next slide will help you out further. Okay, so here are pictures, and I want you to identify what movements are actually occurring at these joints. So what movement is occurring at the elbow joint there, at the elbow joint here, ankle joint, so on. So if you pause this and just give those a go, we'll go on to the answers. So you've got elbow flexion is occurring, so his hand's going to be coming down here, decreasing the angle at the joints, that's flexion. Elbow extension, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, toes pointing up. Lateral flexion, hyperextension, adduction, because it's coming across towards the midline, abduction of the hip. This is horizontal adduction, horizontal abduction, internal rotation, and lateral rotation. So lateral rotation going out, internal rotation or medial rotation coming in, and then finally at the bottom here we've got circumduction. Shoulder, hip, shoulder, hip, shoulder, vertebrae to the back, lateral flexion, vertebrae to the back, ankle, ankle, elbow, elbow. So here's an exam question. Identify the movement occurring at Eve's ankle when she's jumping and taking off. So if you just pause this. The answer is plantar flexion. Now, you've got a piece of paper in front of you. If you can try and fill it out by the information provided to you in this table. So hinge, specifically the elbow. What are the three bones that articulate bones to make the elbow joint, which is the hinge joint, and what are the movements that are available at that joint? So for knee, ankle, shoulder, hip, and wrist. If you can just pause this and give that a go for me. Here are your answers. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but they're the answers you should have. Right, what we've got now is we've got some exams questions for you. Got a few of them. So first of all, explain how movements of the hip joint allow the gymnast to achieve the position shown in the picture. This is worth 4 marks. Okay, so you're going to have to make a few points on this. So if you just pause it and answer that for me. So the answer you should have is flexion and abduction. So literally just gone through the actual movements. That gets you 2 marks straight away because they're the movements that are occurring at the hip, allowing the legs to be moved upwards and outwards. Pretty self-explanatory. Into the pike position. You wouldn't have to say that, but there you go, into the pike position, because that's what's happening. Except any other answer which is specific to do with regards to movements and the actual joint itself. Next question. More marks. This is a 6 marker. The synovial joint of the shoulder allows him to complete the bowling action. Analyse how the structure of Alistair's shoulder joint allows him to complete the bowling action. Now I'll give you a piece of bit of information before you actually go on to structure. Don't forget we've just looked at the structure of a synovial joint on the previous slide, so you've got some information about that. I don't use your notes. Try and do it off the top of your head to begin with. Also shoulder, what movements are occurring at the shoulder and so forth. So if you can give that a go for me. And here is your answer. Okay, so what does synovial membrane do? Secretes synovial fluid. Synovial fluid keeps the joint lubricated. which allows the cricketer to complete the bowling action. You've got all the information you need on this. If you just go through this and try and make sense of the actual answer. Now, they've made it specific to the synovial joint of the shoulder that allows him to complete a bowling action, and how the structure. So to make structure here, so we are talking about the previous slide with regards to the bursa, articular cartilage, synovial membrane, synovial fluid, ligaments, and this is what all this information is regarding here.